So this presentation came in like a lightning bolt. And if you know the path of the initiates, either we're ascending through the serpentine spirals of practice and initiation and becoming, and then there's other times where the insights, the downloads, the directives drop in like a flash of lightning. And so this presentation came from me actually sitting in another person's class and realizing that this is such a pump that beats the heart of my work, why I do what I do, why I have the specific offers that I have for my community. And it's also something that has been kind of downloading into my system over time. So the inspiration to talk about it came from a class with a man named William Henry inside of Academy of Oracle Arts. So you can just kind of get the flavor of that vibe. Um, but you can also find codes of this lineage in the book, The Immortality Key. If you study Jesus as an ascended master, the Marys, the Mas, the Magdalens, the Miraphors, if you go into really any sort of mystical teaching from any culture, from any religion, you will likely find this teaching of the traveling light body hidden inside of it. And also, in many ways, hidden in plain sight. It becomes the most prophetic kind of part of the transmission of religion and of the stories that we've been given and of the biblical philosophies that we hold as a culture and as a society right now to really kind of see what we do and why we do it and why it's so important beyond just this human understanding of our soul's calling to this process and our kind of past lifetime memories of being initiated into this way again and again through many different types of light codes and mystery school initiation. So today we're talking about your light body, and we're going to specifically talk about it in this lens of this traveling aura that we each have, this kind of intelligent system that is within us and surrounds us and is an interconnected, interdependent part of this sacred play of our human lives here on Earth. And we're talking about it from the lens of prophecy. So I want to say here at the beginning that nothing I say has to be true for you. Nothing that I deliver here is something you should just take with, um, you should just take and run with. I invite you to really bring whatever downloads or intuitive hits you're receiving from this into your own practice, digest it, integrate it into your own story, and see what this means for you, why it would be important for your journey, your purpose, and process in life, and how you can continue to be a transmission of whatever thread of this teachings is in alignment for you. So, who is this presentation for? I felt into like two kind of primary soul groups. And of course, there's a lot of different types of souls that will watch this. There's a lot of different dimensions of what your soul is up to in this lifetime. But for the sake of today's conversation, there were these specific elements, energetics of the soul that was a right match for what this transmission is going to deliver. So, who are some of those souls? You may potentially resonate with having many past lifetimes on earth as an initiate into the schools of mystery. So lots of different cultures have them. Some of the ones we kind of know quite well in our modern culture is the Essenes, who Jesus was a part of. But there were these miraculous, shamanistic, um, devout students who would kind of remove themselves from society and they would study and they would train in a certain type of initiation, certain type of mystery schooling, a certain type of study to upgrade their soul in this body in this lifetime. And so we'll kind of talk about more of what that means. So maybe you resonate with being one of those souls who came to earth or, wherever else we have gathered together to become a master in a certain way. And you've spent many lifetimes working on this mastery program, and it has continued into this lifetime. Of course, now probably in more of a modern, current, um, a modern current way of being self-initiated now rather than kind of initiated by another into who we are and what our purpose is and what we're here to do. There's also probably a thread with a lot of you in this soul group that is hearing this presentation today that's got some type of history inside of a biblical religion, inside of one of the kind of modern day religions, right? So Islam, Christianity, Judaism. I would say like there's probably some threads in here of people that have like touched and tasted, sat with, or were born into the realms of Hinduism, Buddhism, some of the other more kind of Eastern philosophies. And, something I was talking with a friend with who's on a podcast, so you may have heard this being said before, is that, we're kind of told to look in these two directions, Eastern to Western. And we do that in a lot of ways, right? It's like right and left, male and female, us or them. But what about the fact that on this kind of shamanistic wheel, on this medicine wheel, there is an above and a below. There is a north and a south. And so, like this friend was saying, and like I also really resonated with, a lot of us kind of took our journeys, not just east and west, but also into the north and south, into some of the indigenous practices that come from the land that we walk on, that we have transitioned into with our families, that we're kind of born from the attunement to the land. And so I'm, of course, talking from a Western perspective, from somebody that lives in the States. But this type of north to south recalibration, recognizing that East and West are a part of that chat, a part of that oracular circle, is, in my opinion, what really gets us into our oracle bodies, into the body that is designed to receive visions, to receive the codes and the downloads, rather than this kind of old template of ascension, of trying to rise up and out of the body in order to meet God, which was what a lot of those kind of old mystical, meditating in a cave type religious or spiritual cults, like that was their primary goal, was how do we transcend this body? How do we move from the density of the lower energy centers to kind of raise our soul consciousness up to a level where we can up and leave, where we can ascend out of this body, out of this lifetime, and into whatever comes next, which denies the feminine pathways of our bodies that each of us have, no matter what gender you are. It denies this connection to the earth that each one of us have. And it denies the vessel of this body that we've been given to fulfill our prophecy and our soul's karma inside of. It kind of rejects this God-given right to be in a body and have spiritual experiences and fulfill your soul's destiny with what you've been given the day that you were birthed out of the womb of your mother. So, in my opinion, it's bringing a not just a feminine, but like the matriarchal aspect, the mother earth aspect, the mother that birthed our body aspect back into the chat, rather than just looking at it from a horizontal plane and or trying to physically up and leave this horizontal plane so we don't have to look at anything at all. So you may have had some type of journey inside of these prophetic biblical religions, and that may have led you to either leave the church or leave the temple. Maybe you found your way back again. Probably most of us here have found that within our own spiritual practices, we have found the God, the Holy One, the Jesus Christ energy that they were talking about in these monotheistic type churches. I guess not every religion is monotheistic, but inside of these construction of the state of church and state of religion that we know of as today, recognizing that through your own kind of conversations with God and the divine and your spiritual practice that you've met God there in probably a deeper, more profound way than you ever met God inside of a church. With that being said, there are a lot of us being called back into the walls of the temple, the walls of the church, the walls of these original teachings to update them to current time. And so we were just in the cross of planning the last 400 years per human design and the I Ching and the gene keys. We were in this type of consciousness that was all about kind of building four walls and creating a lot of rules and a lot of linearity and a lot of kind of mental cognition, scientific understanding, a more masculine style of building, growing, implanting the masculine consciousness onto the earth. Nothing wrong with that. That's where we were. And now we're shifting into something else, which, in my opinion, is a weaving of the masculine and the feminine and the God within us, right? It's like the two parents that also need some kind of divine holy energy to be able to bring a through a soul from the other dimensions. Like all three parts have to be put into play, which I think is this cross of the sleeping phoenix that we're moving into, this spiritual awareness, this emotional awareness that allows our multidimensionality to be in the conversation with us. Our inner masculine, our inner feminine, our inner godly self, our inner human self, all of these aspects that make us whole, that make us holy humans on the earth. So some of us may be feeling called to reintegrate our mystery school teachings, our kind of miraculous conception of ourself back into the realm of religion and potentially infusing these spaces, these cultures, these groups of people with some of the original magic and mystery teachings that these religions were born and bred from, but forgot through the cross of planning and beyond. You also may be a soul that has ventured into spiritual cults, but I would like to think, I feel that you're likely not someone that really spent a lot of time there, or if you did, there was a low resonance with a lot of what was being talked about. Maybe not at first, because at first it might have been the only conversation happening outside of religion that actually felt like something holy and spiritual that you could connect to, right? But potentially, after some time in these spaces, you probably noticed a low level of authenticity, a kind of disconnection from the roots, spirituality kind of grown on bypassed belief systems or belief systems that bypass certain parts of humanity, that rejected certain parts of our human story. And so you may have kind of checked in and then also maybe checked out of that hotel room. So low resonance with this new age type of spirituality, which in all honesty is very deeply connected to everything we learned in religion and everywhere that spirituality came from. It's just a energy dressed in a different drag. It's just an energy dressed in a different clothing, but it's really all the same. And the kind of rejection and denial and disassociation from that inheritance is what I think is kind of keeping a lot of these places ungrounded, we'll just say. So potentially you're someone that feels like a starseed or has had resonance with some type of event happening on Earth, but your path has most likely been more interested in personal attunement, right? Getting in your energy body, connecting to your soul, feeling safe to be yourself in your physicality, bringing more of yourself online, and potentially starting to map kind of the soul's journey so you can remember what you've been interested in over many lifetimes so you can continue that work in this lifetime. There's also this familiarity with the concept of dying before you die, which is a kind of inherent teaching inside of the mystery schools, is that a lot of the work that we're doing is to wake up inside of this reality, which becomes its own kind of mini death process. The thing that kind of pops to mind when I'm thinking of this is like the movie The Matrix and the actual unplugging of Neo when he kind of wakes up from what the Matrix was and he enters back into the real world. It's kind of shocking, right? He goes through his own embryonic fluid sac, and he gets unplugged from the system, from the Matrix itself. And it's in many ways, painful because you're having to collapse a belief system, a reality that you've held as true in your, not just in your head, but in your whole aura and your whole embodiment and your whole resonance of life, to really let that awareness, that truth that you believed die so that the new, more coherent truth can be born within you. And there's kinds of a lot of different ways that we can look at dying before you die, but that's the premise, is that you're allowing the smaller consciousness of this one lifetime, this one human cycle, or what you've been programmed and conditioned to believe to die or get reconstructed into the macro consciousness of your soul, into the awareness that things don't just end when the body dies, that there is, and eternal life source that flows within you that you are a part of even after you leave this planet. And part of that is a mourning process. And we have these dying before you die is kind of built into our lives. Like a lot of religions have these initiations at 12 or 13 that allows the childhood to be decomposed, to die, so that the adulthood or the teenagehood or them taking responsibility of their life can be born through that ending. Motherhood, another great example of dying before you die, going through the portal of the birth initiation for both parents, right? That the people that you were before is also kind of being buried into the last lifetime because your new role, your new job, your new human, your new self is being birthed through the canal that the child is being birthed through, so that you become then parents instead of just whatever you were before, right? It's maiden to mother, son to father. There's also very specific interests for this soul group for the two. And I see them kind of as separate, but likely you will resonate with both of them in some way the same. But that you are kind of, you've been given a job to work with and on the Earth's energy body. And not only does that mean that you're working on the Earth's energy body, whether that's gridding, whether that's communing, whether that's offering, but also working on the energy bodies of other humans, yourself included, animals, plants, working on the aura, working on the energy of things, right? A lot of us can probably relate to that in different ways. Like if you're a projector, you can probably relate to that as a guide for the energy of the earth, right? If you're a woman, you can probably relate to this as someone that has had to be in deep attunement to your family and your community to understand what people were going through so that you could really meet them where they're at. And you could say that a man or a woman or person could feel those exact same ways, but there is likely some work that you have been doing on the energy body of this planet and everything that is grown from this planet. There's this other group that it feels separate, but then again, what is separation? It's all the same. That is working on the prophecies of Earth, working with the prophets, biblical and beyond, working with the angelic realm, working with the guides, working with the stories that we have inherited as a human species to help to kind of weave a new transmission inside of the collective story. So that person, this person, if you are that person, um, you have probably been deeply interested in understanding your own prophecy, your purpose, your reason for being here, your job on the planet, which led you into things like human design, astrology, studying your gene keys, going to yoga, sitting in meditation, pouring yourself some tea, deeply studying somebody else's work, all to discover what your energy is to deliver to the human population. So that person's work is really weaving a new contextualized awareness of what humanity is up to on this planet at this time and bringing it current with this transition from the cross of planning to the cross of the sleeping phoenix, where we will have an emotional spiritual intelligence that we will also have to incorporate and work with beyond the intelligence of the body and beyond the intelligence of the mind that will become very important to where we're going as a species over the coming dawn. So today's flow, we've already gotten into it, but we are going to talk about the time of prophecies, potentially that we are living in, stories of the light body, the ascended masters, and we'll complete with a talk on transfiguration. So, the time of prophecies, what prophecies are we talking about? Well, in that New Age community, they would likely call this the event. Something happens that shifts all of humanity, that changes the game on planet Earth. We might see tendrils of that prophecy either from or infused into some of these other ones that I've listed here. The dragonfly's dream is the mutation of the 55th gene key that's connect to the sleeping phoenix. I put that in there wrong, but the cross of the sleeping phoenix is what we're moving into as a species. And the dragonfly's dream is this epic story about this awakening of consciousness that is happening inside of each of us, that we've been like nymphs, like how the dragonfly spends the beginning of its life underwater, unconscious potentially, just kind of swimming in the depths of emotions that we haven't fully been able to take into our body and feel ourselves. We've just been kind of living in them. And as the dragonfly does, it crawls up a stalk. One day, just something inside of it turns on, something awakens inside of its consciousness that causes it to start to rise, crawl up a stalk out of the water, and work with, pull all of the water that's in its body and turn that water into wings. So it's this idea that will take all of the emotions inside of us, all of the watery depths of our unconscious, all of this spiritual energy that we have been in relationship with, but never fully used, never fully worked with, never fully drawn into our body so that we could create with that energy. Something will switch, a flip will switch, we'll crawl out of the depths of unconscious and we'll begin to work with those spiritual emotions to create wings that allow us to ascend and fly into a different dimension that those nymphs on the bottom of the water could never see. They didn't even know existed. So it's humanity living kind of on the bottom of this ocean floor, this water, this unconscious depth, never knowing that there's a whole other dimension that exists, but you have to be able to have wings. You have to be able to have this energy body that can transcend and fly above what we once were and see it from that perspective. So that's the dragonfly's dream, is this mutation of the 55th gene key that's happening in our emotional solar plexus. That, according to the myth, according to the prophecy, in 2027, we will begin to start this genetic mutation. And I would say we've been in this since 2020 because, 7 years cellular reprogramming, but that this will be when the new human starts to kind of make its way down into the earth, and we will be seeing life through a different type of awareness. So those of us that have kind of been on the spiritual path, that have been working in these codes for lifetimes, we've been prophetically preparing for this change. So, what are some of the other things that this time of prophecies is called? And, it's like they won't probably all agree that they're talking about the same things, but when you really sit with them, they might be different in language, in texture, but they are the same transmission channeled through all of these different light bodies, all of these different lineages, in order for us to be able to know about these things, be aware of these things right now. So, some of it is called the return of the Messiah. This is what, my Judaism, my religion would call it. In Christianity, they would call it the second coming, I believe. Not, fully updated on that religion, but the age of revelations is what they might call this time. Kali Yuga ending, this is like my sister who has been studying for a long time would say, like, we're not at the end of Kali Yuga. This is like a myth, this isn't true. We're still very much inside of it. And you might talk to other people and they might say something different. So we're just going to put it here for the sake of the conversation and take what you want to believe from it. Obviously, go to the cultures, the peoples, the religions that these things come from and hear from them. We're just bringing this in for our topic today. Then there's the Hopi prophecy of the Rainbow Warrior. I think probably also this prophecy comes from other tribes as well, but that we will be at a point where we will emerge as these multidimensional, multicolored, kaleidoscopic beings of light that have come to rearrange the energies on the planet. Look up these, whichever ones are interesting to you. If you haven't heard them yet, look them up. We've heard that we are entering into the age of Aquarius. Again, some astrologists might disagree with this. It's called in some places the Great Turning. In some places, we're calling this disclosure. So my husband just said there's a new movie out about the disclosure of what the US government has actually been up to with the aliens. And I kind of laughed, like, I don't think they're going to tell us anything more than we already know, but cool that they think they're disclosing the things to us that we've been already in relationship with. We don't need that external authority in the age of the sleeping phoenix, the cross of the sleeping phoenix. There is another prophecy, this return to Zion. It comes from African cultures, it comes from Judaic cultures, and I find it very interesting that such a hot topic of conversation in our lifetimes, like truly since I was a kid, it's been talked about. But I know it's been talked about long before I was a kid because my Hebrew name is an inheritance of this prophecy. It's not a name that you know. It's my secret name that was given to me at birth, which it's not that secret because I'll probably put up a post about it one day. But this prophecy of this return to Zion, to this return to the golden city of light, this return to, in my opinion, it's actually talking about the Garden of Eden, which we're going to get into next. So again, interesting that it's such a hot topic in politics. Disclosure, right? What they're telling us is often something that's quite behind what we have been working on as souls in this lifetime and beyond. So, remembrance to return to what you know and not let somebody else disclose an idea to you, a prophecy to you, a political agenda to you that goes against what you know to be true in your oracular nature, right? This return to Zion, it's kind of a big thing for me because I have been studying this prophecy since I was a kid in my own way, understanding what Zion truly is and the legacy of it and the lineage of it and what has been handed down through peoples from the beginning of time that we are now super distracted from because all we see is what men are doing with power. Let's just put it that way. The final prophecy is the World Wide Web and the worldwide weaving, which to me it's like taking all of these prophecies, all of the things that we're talking about that come from all of these different places around the world, and likely there's more that I just don't know about, and we're weaving them together. We're finally getting to see that we have these similar traditions in our cultures, in our lineages, in our religions that have something to do with one another. And that's why I think that we are living in the time of prophecies now because we've all been all of our familial ancestral peoples that we come from have been passing these traditions, these tales, these prophecies, these stories down. They have been handed down through different layers of the culture. But for the first time ever, we're not just seeing our own prophecies or ourself as separate in the prophecy. We are seeing how we are one significant thread in a great tapestry of what is occurring on planet Earth right now and of the stories that we have been told that have led us to being here, to be at a time where we are interfacing with technology, which means we are interfacing with a worldwide web of energy, which we've always been connected to, right? But now we're getting to actually see it physically in front of us in these things that we use in real time. So, this to me is why this is the prophetic time that all of these stories have been leading up to, all of these prophecies have been leading up to. They were talking about the future of humanity. And I believe that that future is now because of the fact that we are all now getting together as a worldwide species and starting to talk about it, starting to exchange the codes. That again, were once these separate threads, but when you weave all those threads together, right? When we weave all these energies together, they create a new reality. They create a new overlay on reality. Or some may say they create a doorway. And through that doorway, we walk into a place that we didn't know existed before we grew our wings to get there. So I believe these prophecies, they're the future of humanity, but remembered from the past. And I think that's a really significant thing to tune into, that we are tapping back into where we once were as a way to lead us to where we are going to be. It's like that 7-13 dichotomy in the human design and in the gene keys, if you're familiar. Things to remember in this time: transition is messy. Think about moving from one house to another, right? Things get a little messy before they get cleaned up. You got to take everything off the walls. You got to clean up the floors, right? You got to put it all in boxes. And then you move into the house and you have all your boxes and you have all your things and you got to start putting it all away, right? Transition is messy. It's okay that it's messy. Chaos is actually very creative. Birth is painful. To birth new worlds, you have to be initiated into the next lifetime through that birth portal. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be painless. And death is devastating. And in this rebirth into this new paradigm on Earth, just even talking about 2027 shifting into the cross of the sleeping phoenix, the cross of planning has to die. And in its last breaths, it's going to try to probably pull some energy with it so that it doesn't have to die alone. So death is devastating. We're not ignoring that there is devastation happening on the planet as these prophecies are coming true, but potentially we can start to relate to this idea as part of the process, not something to be resisted, denied, or called out, but brought closer into our experience so we can really look at what's up with humanity right now and start to witness it how it needs to be witnessed rather than forcing our own idea of what it's supposed to look like onto it. So let's go back to the beginning, the original light body, the Garden of Eden. This is our first story. This was the first story in my religion. I can't, of course, say this is the first story in everyone's transmissions of your upbringing of what humanity was and where we came from and where we're going. But for many of us, the Garden of Eden was the first story. And that first story talks about this original light body. And we're not really taught it like this, but in Kabbalistic teachings, which I've been studying a lot more of the past couple of years, it is known that Adam and Eve were in this transparent, luminescent light body. And on Saturday nights, in again my culture in my upbringing, we have this ceremony to kind of like welcome in the rest of the year and say welcome in the rest of the week and say goodbye to the week before. And part of this ritual is that we hold up our fingernails to a fire, a braided candle with a fire that we have lit, and we look at the reflection of the fire in our fingernails. And one of the reasons that we do this is to reconnect us to that original story of Adam and Eve when it is said that they were in bodies that were like fingernails, right? See through like fingernails. Um, the material that is like fingernails, this luminescent light body that was not human per se. And so then what we know, right, is like this was the original fall of humanity when Eve listened to the serpent, ate of the apple from the tree of knowledge, woke up and saw herself separate as Adam, convinced Adam to eat the tree, yada, yada, yada. God kicks them out of the garden. And it said in the garden in Exodus that they put on their animal skins. And so we kind of, at least I was taught that this is like, oh, they start putting on their clothes because they see the female body is different from the male body and they become embarrassed by that difference. So they have to cloak themselves and robe themselves to honor this difference. But the Kabbalistic teachings are that when they put on their animal skins, they put on their human body. They moved from a light body to this physical human vessel that we are all familiar with because we are inside of today. And that this human vessel contained the light body. They put on their animal skins, they put on their human form over this light body. And that's what we know, right? The fall of humankind, and then we've been working our way trying to get back to in God's good grace, right? Through our incarnations as humanity. One of the things I have been learning recently that I really love about this story is that we're not actually fallen like many of us have been taught. And it wasn't actually something that God blamed Eve for. And in fact, God actually saw this as the opportunity to fulfill the prophecy of what Adam and Eve were going to be, what Adam Kadmon, what the original source, the original species was going to be. In that because Eve ate of the tree of knowledge, she made a choice. And it sent humanity on this journey of decision, right? Of right or left, of yes or no, us or them, above, below, this separation. But in that separation, we got the power to choose, to consent or to deny, to make a choice. And it is said in this teaching that I am tending, this lineage that I'm tending to, that getting this choice is actually making us, can make us more powerful than the angels. Because the angels don't have choice, they are just in divine devotion to God. They don't have a choice of how or why. They are just there in service to the Holy One. But humans, through our journey, we're given a choice. And if we choose in our embodiment the choice to be holy, the choice to be with God, the choice to be divine in nature, then we become more powerful than these angelic beings that never had that choice. And in that, God then created this new species that is actually more powerful than the last species that was created, that was seen as the height of spiritual power. And we can kind of take this story back into like the times before these times and the beings that were potentially on earth that were of great power and great enormity and kind of looked out over smaller beings as power over them, as my slaves, speaking for those beings, that potentially God wasn't too happy with, right? We've kind of heard of the fall of the angels too. We've heard of like the fall of some of the ascended masters, where they went. And that gave us even more of a paradigm to choose. But it also paved a really beautiful path to say that we can hold more power in our body without having to have power over. So a lot of what we've learned is that the we left the Garden of Eden and it doesn't exist anymore. But I have a very different philosophy that I have felt since I was a childhood, that this on the road to Zion, this return to Zion is actually a return to the garden through the light body, because it is a city of light. It is a holy place that is in a higher dimension than what we are all kind of perceiving as mainstream on this planet. And not that the garden lives separate from the earth, but that the garden is actually found inside of the earth, potentially in deeper layers than we've ever gone into the earth. But we have been kept separate from it. Our consciousness has been separated from it so that we can redevelop, reattune to, reconfigure ourselves into the divine light of beings that can actually hold and tend to and protect that space in the deepest, most humble regard. Through this teaching, there is this idea that there is an eastern gate that was left open to return to the Garden of Eden. What do we kind of know about the East, right? Well, it's like where the sun rises, the new dawn, the resurrection. It's also supposed to be the direction of like spirit and the winged and the guides and the guardians. So it is said that the way remains open but guarded, and it's protected by, I never know if I pronounce this right, but the cherubim, angels, archangels, powerful angels. And they guard it with a flaming sword. So they're kind of like these bouncers of the East Gate. And what I'm hoping to unpack for you here today is that they're not bouncing everyone from getting back in. They're just bouncing the ones who do not sing the song. And what do I mean by sing the song? I mean that we are vibrating back to the vibratory portal, the auric energy field of the soul body. Right now, we've been very much operating in animal body. We've moved to mental body. And now we're moving back into that kind of third body, right? It's funny, like these movies, these shows that are coming out right now, the three body problem. Moving back into this third body of awareness, which again, like I said, is like not feminine, like I would call mostly the animal body, not masculine, like I would probably call the mental body, the mental awareness, but this kind of godly body, this creative body, this other essence of who we are that is part of our creation story. And so I like to call that singing the song of our soul, when we have all of these bodies working together, when we are vibrating to an energy that sings the essence of who we are authentically, spiritually, intuitively, where people can get what we have to put down, pick up what we have to put down, where people can feel who we are without us saying anything, because we're simply vibrating to the energy. We are simply emanating that energy out, like who do we know who did this? We'll get into this later. Jesus, some of the other ascended masters, that they could create change in their reality just by their witness, their presence, their oracle hands, just by their purpose of being alive. So I believe those bouncers are really just ensuring that only the true soul self can pass back into the garden so we don't make the same mistakes that, and I don't even like to call it mistakes, but so we don't make the same choices that had us exiting the garden, while also understanding that that exodus and that choice is actually what gave us the power to return in a way that was in deep honor, reverence, and understanding of our role. So we would never wonder what was living outside the garden. So we would never care about what was outside the gates, right? Because we lived it, we became it, and we brought that ecosystem back into the garden, into the holy temple of light. So how do we do this? I'm gonna again get into this, but kind of my three main things, the three main things that I really guide in my work: healing the aura, healing the energy body, integrating our soul's blueprint, and awakening the physical animalistic animalia body, awakening the anima. So different stories of the light body. And I have some AI photos here. I feel like people might have resistance to the fact that I weave AI into my business, but I think part of this story of the soul is that we are kind of teaming up with other aspects of what God has given us on the planet. Because I believe that everything comes from life, everything comes from source. And if right now technology is on the planet, it means it has come from that place too. And so I'm not in resistance to what it is creating. I am simply developing a relationship to it. So just want to put that here too, that this is part of my development, developing my relationship to the spirit of this new technology on the planet. And I invite you to also start to, in your own way, start to have a conversation with it too, because it's not going anywhere. And it's still infantile in what it's here to do on the planet. So I think now is the appropriate time for those of us that are parents of a different way of life, that are mothers to a new myth, that are caretaking the soul lineage on Earth, that are a part of the soul of Earth's prophecy, that we are infusing our consciousness, our compassion, and our awareness into this infant spirit on the planet. So that as it gets raised, as it gets grown, it has the influence of souls like us, not just the kind of like technologically heavy minds that created it. So, what is the master's path? It's a lot of things, but one of the things that we really know to be true is that they are working to develop their light body. The Tibetan rainbow light body, right? This is a huge thing in that lineage, is to develop the body to be able to ascend through the many layers of its energetic ecosystem so that the physical body almost dissolves and the soul walks out. The body of glory, this is body of Christ, like similar teachings, this energy that Jesus programmed, I don't know if that's the right word, but programmed and portrayed into him and into the world. The original bodies of Adam and Eve, the skin like fingernails. I think I'm pronouncing this right, aureole, the halo that we see in depictions of Jesus and Mary. It's also called the luminous body. And you might have other things that this is called too, or you might have heard of other ways that this has been interpreted. The light body is in these mystical stories, in these kinds of prophecies that we know today, it's a cloak of light. And it is both a protective garment, it is also a metaphysical teaching, it's a technology, It could be a physical cloak of light, but I look at that more as a weaving of energy. So that's what we work on in aura. My energy medicine mastery training is we are looking at the aura as this interdependent weaving with the greater ecosystems of energies on the planet. And so we are consciously weaving organic energy into our aura, into our energy body. So I think that might be a little bit more what this physical cloak of light is, because when I'm working with the aura, I'm absolutely perceiving it as this physical cloak that kind of lives over our humanality. The cloak of light is also a frequency encoding, right? Just by being in the space with it, you are getting updates to that program. And it's a traveling system. It allows us to travel through different dimensions. So we may have heard of traveling vehicles, traveling light body vehicles in some of our studies. We may not have. In my traditions, it's called the Merkaba. It's something that you may have heard of in the story of the prophet Elijah, or no, sorry, not Elijah, Ezekiel, where he was kind of cast out of society and he was living, I think, by a river, and he missed his temple space, he missed his communion with God, he missed his rituals, and he wondered how will he ever be able to find that place again. And then it is said that God traveled to him on this Merkava traveling light vehicle that was run by the wheels of the cherubim of the angels and came to him even in his exodus, right? So we're kind of talking about all of these different layers when we're talking about the light body, like this very kind of physical masters developing this light body, then this kind of medical physical metaphysical, this cloak of light that we're working with that's potentially unseen but greatly affecting us. And then this traveling body of light that allows the divine essence, the spiritual energies in us to be able to go wherever we need to go inside of the body and outside of the body. And for my geometry people in here, this is the 64 tetrahedron, 64 star tetrahedron. It's like that's the kind of shape we're considering when we're thinking about this energy that's around the body that allows us to travel. For those of you that are in aura, this is why we work with the elemental magic symbol. This is why we work with the base structure of the elements, because that is just the cut and copy, the replication that becomes this greater awareness of your ability to travel through this life in your organic form. So, some of the ascended masters that we're familiar with are Jesus, Mary, Isis, Uriel or Ariel, Saint Germain, who was also considered to be Merlin, the Buddha, Kuan Yin, Hermes, Trismegistus, Hermes, Elijah, and Elisha. And their goal primarily was this perfecting themselves. Becoming like angels is what I like to call it. Working with their human body to ascend through their physical form to access more of their physical and spiritual intelligence so that they could do more from within their physical body on the planet Earth, right? It's different in flavor than this idea of ascending to leave the planet, which, potentially we could say that maybe some of these beings that was also part of their work. But more so, especially, through the teachings of Jesus and Mary and Elijah and Elisha and all of them, truly that we see that their goal wasn't to up and leave this planet, it was to inherit their spiritual um, gifts and their spiritual abilities and their spiritual cognition to awaken the body, to reprogram the body, to update the body to a new level of intelligence so that through their body, they could support the transitions, the humanality of our story of the prophecy of Earth. So, what are some of the things that we know these like perfecting yourself to gain this light body? What are the transmissions of the light body? Like what can this light body do when it is in its state of perfection? So, I just kind of went back to some of the people that I knew. Um, Elijah is someone that I also have had deep interest in since I was a child. One of our one of our rituals that we do is during a holiday, we pour a glass of wine for Elijah and we go and we open the door for him to come in and drink our offerings. And it was always me that was like raising my hand to be the one that opened the door for Elijah because I was both terrified of it and deeply intrigued about the fact that we were inviting spirits into our home. Elijah parts the Jordan River, raises the dead, calls down fire and rain, controls the weather, multiplies food, instantaneous transportation. He was seen in multiple places at once, ascends to heaven alive. In his transition, when he ascends, when he gets on this traveling vehicle to ascend into the next part of his life, he transmits his light cloak to it's not Alicia. I think I'm actually pronouncing it wrong. I actually didn't know the story of Elisha, until I was doing research for this presentation, but he gives his cloak to his disciple. And then this disciple ends up becoming actually more powerful than he is. Purifies and heals poisoned water, multiplies the oils for burning candles, raises a child from the dead, curses a youth, heals disease. I had to look into some of this stuff, so it wasn't right on the tip of my tongue, but telepathic visions of distant events. Another couple of ascended masters that many of us are familiar with on the planet, Jesus, right? Instant healing, physical and psychic, exorcism of spirits, material multiplication, right? Creating additional food when needed, turns water into wine, walks on water, calms the storms. Again, weather manipulation, reads minds, telepathy, transfiguration into a radiant light body, resurrection from death. Mary, the Marys, healing abilities, mediumship, alchemical sexuality, prophetic insight, telepathic communication, energy transmission via touch, via anointment. Some of the other ones, Saint Germain, Merlin, alchemical transmutation from lead to gold, clairvoyance. Hermes, who is also Thoth, resurrection, immortality, shapeshifting. Isis, spellcasting, maternal protection, magical command of the elements. These are what we are kind of told is what is possible when you've gotten to the level of mastery. So, what is the human vessel? It is the cloak that guards, that garments, puts a garment over our original soul's light, our original light body. But when we perfect the physical body, like the ascended masters, when we perfect our humanity and perfect not in the Virgo to be perfect, but perfect and to make it into God's glory, the body of glory that we are destined to become, we then vibrate to a frequency where more of that light can emerge from within us. We sing the song. We have the song that allows us to sustain and maintain more of our godliness in our physicality on the planet. So, by working with energy and the soul blueprint and our breath, we can stabilize our human vessel while holding this higher frequency of light and then being able to do things that the light body could do, that the ascended masters could do. So I find this to be so interesting. And again, it's like this is not my religion. I've never read I've read the what is called the Old Testament, the original Bible, but I've never read some of these traditions from Christianity. But I find it fascinating that one of the things that is said in Corinthians is this isn't exact, but believers will not all sleep, but all will be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall all be changed. So think about that. Like, what is a word that we are all hearing all the time, especially in the US, but in many places in the world that are curious about what's up to in the United States? Trump. And it says in this prophecy, yes, it's talking about trumpets, but it says in the last trump. I think that's why there's like, I haven't gone too deep into the rabbit hole of the people that believe he is here to save us, but I believe that it's this kind of original prophecy, this original story that is invoking this sense of faith and belief into this person because it connects to something that's bigger than just what we're seeing playing out on the screens. It connects to one of these original prophecies, one of these original stories that we're all woven with, that are woven together inside of us. So the last trump, the twinkling of an eye, to me, it's like that's the light body, right? If you see something shining, if you see something beautiful, if you see something luminescent, it's a twinkle. Your eyes twinkle in response. at the sound, for the trumpet shall sound. So at the sound, this is what happens, right? It's when you're vibrating to the sound of your soul, the song of your soul. And there's this like, it's a TV show that they just canceled, which I'm very bummed about. It's also like a 16 book series, which I have not gotten through the first one of, but really want to, called The Wheel of Time. And there's like they're giving away so many juicy codes in that show, so many of these like original stories and prophecies, and something they talk about that they're kind of like unraveling inside of at least the show. I'm sure they go so much deeper to it in the books is that there were these original people whose job was to guard the song. And they ask, "Do you remember the song?" And it's, I don't remember the song, but I will spend my life looking for the song. What also happens in the show, they have this very sacred trumpet that they blow at a moment when the dragon, so I'm not talking about dragons in this presentation, but they're very, very connected to the prophecies I tend. So when the dragon needs the most support, the most power, this other being plays the trumpet, plays this magical horn. And from the horn, all of the warriors from all of these past lifetimes that have fought for the dragon reborn, for this sacred person that was the cause of the fall of the world and will also be the reason that the world gets woven back together again. That all of these soldiers that have been fighting for this weaving of the worlds, this like return, that they all get invoked to come fight at the side of the dragon, fight for this prophecy, which, the dead shall be raised incorruptible. And you see it just play out in the show, and it's like, what are so many of us doing in our work these days, right? We're working with the spiritual realm. We're working with flower essences. We're working with sound. We're working with all of these unseen allies and supports, these beings on the other side, like someone I work with probably more deeply than I work with anyone in my business is my mom, who's on the other side, right? So raising the dead incorruptible, I actually think is more this work that we're all doing, which is that we're raising the spiritual essence of the unseen to work with us in this realm, on this side of things, knowing that they do so from a place of being incorruptible because they are with God. They are with the soul of the world. And we shall be changed. We shall be transfigured. What is transfiguration? We know about this mostly from Jesus. At the top of a mountain with witnesses and disciples, he transforms, he transfigures into a glowing sun of light, clothing as white as bright light. This to me is the original garment that we wore as souls before the fall. And that light is so bright that it can be blinding also to other bodies that are not trained and prepared to hold more of their light. So I think that's why this shadow was kind of casted over his story and some of the other stories that we know, because where we were at as a human species, we could not contain and hold that level of light, which is the same thing of Eve eating of the apple of the tree of knowledge. It was too much consciousness, too much light. What do we know about light? It's intelligent. It stores information. So by eating that apple, she had too much light. She was in a light body, so it was okay, right? But she wasn't prepared. She wasn't initiated. She hadn't been trained. So they were cast out, the original fall. And we see this about Jesus. He was cast out, another one of humanity's falls. He sacrificed himself for the sin of humanity. But when he was ascending, he returned, he transfigured into his original light body. Something else that, the teacher that I took the class from before this like whole PowerPoint wanted to come through was he talks about this like connection between the words purity and poor and how Jesus was in many ways poor because he was so pure. Even though he was rich in knowledge, rich in initiation, rich in spiritual technologies and wisdom, he didn't need any of the physical things. He didn't need the fancy clothes. He didn't need the fancy cloaks. His job was releasing the layers of conditioning that we're also familiar with in human design, releasing the cloaks and the garments that contained his light body so that the true essence of his life source could emerge. empower him from the inside. So it's kind of this idea like transfiguration is like letting go of the material obsessions, including in some ways the body. But I think we're at a different point on this journey where we're recognizing that that's not what he or any of them were actually up to. They were integrating the body back into the original code of light. So, why are we talking about this? Why are we doing this? Is it because I want all of us to be masters? Yes. Because I think that we are all capable of being masters. I think that we all have the ability inside of us to do what the masters did. And I believe that's why we have the prophecies now and why we're weaving them together from all across the world, because I think this is the lifetime when we truly unlock it for more than just the guru, more than just the one prophet, the one person, where each of us knows that we actually have this ability to die before we die and to walk out of this reality consciously. So, something we kind of know to be true, like when the soul gets birthed and born onto earth, is that it forgets its soul memories and it kind of only can see itself through the eyes of its human lens. That's two eyes and not its third eye, and what it perceives through its two eyes and what it has been given from its parents and what is kind of downloaded into its consciousness the day it was birthed onto the planet. And it kind of forgets where it came from or who it is or the soul of its original form. Because there's this kind of overlay to sleep, which remember Corinthians, it's like not everyone will sleep. Some of us will wake up, but right, all of us will be changed. All of us will be transfigured. So that's like why it goes back to like not everyone has to wake up in this lifetime. You don't have to make sure that everyone else wakes up in order for you to be able to fulfill your soul's karma. In fact, it kind of defeats the purpose because they will eventually be changed, but they will be changed on their own timeline and through their own soul's karma, and potentially by you becoming a luminescent body of light. That might be the thing that changes them. Not because you fixed anything or did anything or taught them anything, but because you were a representative of what it means to wake up in this body conscious. I had a dream a couple months, I think, before my mom died, where you know those dreams that just feel like prophecy? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But where you feel something in the dream that you've never felt or you don't usually feel. So in this dream, there was bombs going off. And I had my mom to one side and I had my husband to the other side. And I felt the bomb get dropped on us and I felt the whole bomb move through. I felt the power of it. I felt myself dissolve. I felt myself completely die. And then in the dream, I woke up and I was in a new dimension. And in this dimension, a lot of people weren't there. Um, we were kind of walking around like everything was normal, but there wasn't, everyone that was there before was not there after. And I kind of was walking around like something is wrong here. Like, don't we realize we're missing a lot of people? Hello, does anybody see this? And kind of eventually through this process, I found my mom again. And she said, oh, you closed your eyes when the bomb went off. And I kept my eyes open. And I saw that when the bomb dropped, this light body, this globe, this aura of energy got placed around each of us. And it protected us. And what you actually felt yourself as dying was us being transfigured into this other dimension that, yes, did not look like the same place that we had come from. It was the same but different. But because I stayed conscious, I was able to see what other people could not perceive, which was that something had changed. Not everyone was there, and something was different. And I found it significant that she kept her eyes open to be the one to tell me that. And then she's the one that transitioned a few months later. Because on that side, I stay open all the time, right? You don't fall asleep like we do over here. And when we fall asleep every night, we are in this process of forgetting and waking up each day and having to remember. It is a daily resurrection, per the theme. And this daily confirmation and continuation of rethreading together our soul's prophecy and updating our aura to be able to contain more of the light body, more consciousness to come into us. And in this, we can start to map the pathways of ascension, not the ones that disassociate us from our human form, that allow us, the ones that allow us to walk out of this dimension consciously, to not just die how we've known dying to be, but to actually see the doorway. See the doorway that you can open and step consciously into another dimension without falling asleep, staying fully awake in the process. So I believe that mastering your light body is this true doorway to ascension, this true thing that we're all kind of interested in working on right now as a species. And though not everyone is calling it that, I think that that's what a lot of our kind of mystery schools and our trainings and our healings and our trauma integrations, like I think that that is actually all for this purpose. So it's like a pretty big concept, right, to chew on. That's why I wanted to create this video as just a free offering for us to kind of get into these vibes, because then all of my other offers branch off of this, and it's good to kind of know where we're going and why we're going there. I believe that when we are in our light body, we can return to the Garden of Eden, and we must enter in the body of our soul and in a vessel that is able to contain the frequency of our light. Because when we enter into the garden, we have to vibrationally be a match for the frequency of that space, which, if you know anything about traveling to other dimensions, you have to be vibrating to the energy that matches that space, or you'll get very easily kicked out. It reminds me of like the, DMT journeys that I've talked about in Aura recently, but like that people go and they all see the same thing. They see these like entities working on some things, these, what do they call them? The DMT elves. And then some people, the DMT elves turn around and kind of, you're not supposed to be here, and kick them right out. We can also look at this as like in a spiritual lens. When you are traveling to the realm of the angels, it is known that you have to be able to sing the angelic song. And if you're not singing that song with all the angels, I don't know what it is, but you will be easily spotted as a non-vibrational match and you will be kicked out. So this is the work, to sing that song, to vibrate at a capacity where we can enter into another dimension on this planet that is hopefully capable of containing the magnitude of our light and of what we are really here to do as souls on the earth. And I think that we get there by attuning our aura, mapping our soul's blueprint, and awakening the oracle of our bodies, which is what they might call perfecting yourself. I think our aura is a secret password that allows us to walk and travel into other dimensions. I've said this in other ways, shape, and form, but just to kind of like put that in perspective, I think that other ways that we can kind of enter and exit, potentially just some other things we might need on that journey, is abracadabra, which just is an Aramaic saying, and I think it's actually pronounced abracadabra with a V, but it literally means I create as I speak. So again, we're coming back to this idea that you have to be able to create worlds with your voice, which means your voice has to be attuned to the power source within you, the God self within you. The tarot, the tree of life, the Hebrew letters, these are all maps and pathways to ascend if you look deep enough into them, and they're all the same. They're all portals into different dimensions of consciousness. I believe that the Marys and the Myrfors and myrrh, the essence of myrrh, is also another kind of secret sacred password to walk through dimensions. It was, the way of the Marys was anointment. The way of the Myrfors was anointment. The way of myrrh, what we would anoint with, was myrrh, oils of myrrh, mermaid oil. Anointing the body to encode it with a higher dimensional consciousness that again could potentially be able to receive more of the light. And then the seraphim and the sephirot, it's like these are the angelic beings. Like they also have codes for us. The sephirot in the tree of life, also again, worlds within worlds. And I won't go too deep into this, but the seraphim, or a certain grouping of these angels, also works on the transfiguration of the body. We kind of see that in modern day society as putting makeup on or doing all of these like things that people are doing to transform and transfigure their bodies. I would say that this is like the fall of this. You do you. I actually don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think we're seeing a very distorted version of this happening in, let's say, Hollywood. Look at pictures of people right now. It's crazy. But yeah, some of these angelic beings and these angelic doorways were actually sent to Earth to help in the transfiguration process. So that's the end of the presentation for today. To continue my body of work, especially over the next year, you'll really start to see aspects of this solidifying into containers where we can create form around this concept. I already have Aura in play, but it will come again next year. I don't know when this video will be up, so depending upon when you watch it, potentially Aura might be open now to work on the energy body, to work with your light body. There's an offering coming that I don't want to say the name of it specifically quite yet, but when you see the dragon, you'll know that also the purpose of that offer is the soul blueprint mapping, this other part of this work. And yeah, I want you to know that this is a core kind of teaching and the methods and modalities that I am invigorating and reinventing into the world. And the goal is to get back into the oracle body, our original light bodies, and be able to not ascend out of this reality, but to create an ascension inside of this world where we and our physical human essence can be supporting, powering up, healing, transmitting, prophesying what we need, what the world needs, and what this planetary body requires for its ascension into its next level and into its next lifetime. So I hope to see you. If you liked this class, please share it with people that you know that you think would also appreciate and enjoy the transmission too. And I hope to see you in a future offer where we can get even deeper into these codes. Thank you so much for being here, and bye for now.